session for Lori Compass, the Senate District 13. My name is Steve Bauer. I'll do the MC here, and I've got some questions that I would like to read. And then again, if you have other questions, please feel free to bring those up. And the other thing that I would like to mention is that here's Lori's email, or her website rather, and if you have any questions or if you have concerns or whatever, you can contact her through that website. She will have a listening session Monday, March 12th at 6 p.m. in Watertown at the Watertown Senior Center, and that's 514 South 1st Street. And then in Fort Atkinson on Tuesday the 13th at 6 p.m. in the Dwight Forrest Library, and that's in the community room. There will also be one to be announced in Horicon and also Mayville.
So it's actually going to be in Horicon at the City Hall.
City Hall.
Okay. Can't remember the time. I think it's 6. But.
City Hall on the 15th. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
All right. Well, there have been 2 questions, and then what I'll do, please have check. Yep. What I'll do is I'll read a couple questions here, and if people have further questions, please feel free to give those to me, and we'll clump them together so we can make the best of our time. And if you have specific questions to ask Lori, please do that. But Lori, there are 2 questions that pertain to the economy, and specifically with a sluggish national economy and a flat tax revenues, balancing next year's budget will be even more challenging than the last. How will you balance the budget?
Sure. First of all, I'd like to say that on the day that I announced my candidacy, Scott Fitzgerald released a statement. He didn't acknowledge that I had announced my candidacy or anything, but he just released a statement that said, we have balanced the budget without raising taxes. And I just want to say that both parts of that statement are not true. They did not balance the budget. They basically used accounting tricks to do exactly what they accused Doyle of doing, which was kicking the can down the road. So they didn't balance the budget, and it's a difficult thing, obviously. I mean, for years and years, administrations have struggled with exactly how to balance the budget. Secondly, they did raise taxes, and they raised taxes on the people who can least afford to pay more. They did away with the homestead credit, and they, what was the other? Oh, the earned income credit. So that is, in effect, raising taxes on the poorest people in our society while giving tax breaks to the very, very wealthy. I think that anytime you're dealing with a budget, you're asking yourself moral questions. And so I think as a society, we have to settle on what we think is right, what we think is important in our society. And I personally think healthcare is a basic need, it's a basic right for everyone. And so I think that we should start with issues like that: healthcare, education. We think everybody deserves these things, everybody needs these things. Let's start out by saying, we're going to make sure that everybody gets these, and then we'll figure out how to pay for it. John Erkenbach last week announced a way to reinstate Badger Care. Basically, it was closing that Las Vegas loophole for the wealthiest corporations, and it just seems to me like a no-brainer. Why should we cut health care to the poorest people while giving tax breaks to people who can actually afford to pay their fair share? Yeah.
Excuse me, that's my question. How are you going to balance the budget? Because it's going to be very difficult next time. So
exactly. So I'm not going to be able to stand here and say, I mean, budgets are huge documents that take hundreds of people to work on them. So I'm not going to be able to say right now, this is exactly what I would do. It would take hours, and it would take days, and it would take.
Can you give us just one idea?
Sure. Exactly what I just said was that I think through consultation with the people of this district that we need to decide what our priorities are first. So our priorities are, say, healthcare. And this is just my gut instinct from talking to people when I was carrying petitions. They said healthcare was a problem.
Wouldn't Obamacare take care of all that? It would be like a non-issue.
That's the Affordable Health Care Act, I think is what you're talking about. And I'm talking about what I heard was Badger Care. People want Badger Care back. And so I'm saying that last week, John Erkenbach introduced a plan that would pay for badger care. And that's closing the loophole that allows wealthy corporations to get tax breaks.
Lori, do you have an idea if you're going to raise property taxes or cut more programs?
Again, I'm not going to go into specifics right now. My campaign kickoff is next Saturday, so that's when I'm starting really campaigning. Right now, I'm here to listen and see what your ideas are, see what your priorities are. So, I mean, if you guys have ideas, I would love to hear them. But I'm not going to be able to stand here and say this is exactly what I would do because I haven't listened to everyone yet. I haven't even been up to Horton.
On the 17th, you'll be able to tell us.
No, on the 17th is our party to kick off the campaign.
Okay.
I think what I'm hearing right now is you're letting us know your priorities. And what I would say, with the little bit I've seen in state government in the past year or so, is our priorities are totally out of kilter. If we're giving breaks to corporations and people who can afford to pay, my thought would be, and I agree with what you said, we're going to figure out priorities, healthcare, education, care for the elderly and disabled, whatever it would be, and there is money there to make it work. I do not believe that we can't afford to do these things. I think it's a matter of priorities.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's frustrating that, you know, like with the whole redistricting thing, I just heard the other day that they've gotten $1 million to pay for the legal defense of these lines that a lot of people think were illegally drawn. And so apparently that's a priority for someone, to have $1 million to pay these lawyers. And I think
Compared to spending the millions of dollars on recall,
I'm sorry?
compared to the millions of dollars it's going to cost to do the recall.
Well, the recall would cost a lot less money if Scott Fitzgerald doesn't challenge a lot of signatures, which he did. I've said for 2 months now that we had far more signatures than were required. So for 2 months, he's been asking state workers to verify our signatures. He threw up all these frivolous challenges. He could have chosen not to do that. He could
How
have
is somebody
looked at
out of
them.
our district that signed the recall petition a frivolous throw-up?
There
How
were
do you
not-
account for that?
There were not enough recalls.
But there still are some, and you personally took responsibility for all
There are
of them.
very few, and anyone can go online and see that I put in X.
You still said
Could we
those
please say, I think Lori, as she said earlier, is here today to hear what your priorities are and to hear what your concerns are. I don't think she's here to get into a debate of what will happen in the future. So if you could state, what are your priorities? And what are your a statement or rather than a question that gets us into a debate. The debates will come in the future, correct?
Well, yeah, as I
Okay.
understand it, they're trying to arrange on a
Okay, thank you. So what statements would you have that I could even record up here? I mean, is that what you're looking for,
Well, I
Lori?
mean, the budget question has come up, and so I would like to know what people's priorities are. At other listening sessions, I've heard education, I've heard healthcare, I've heard foster care. What are the priorities in this community?
I would like something to be done about how much the state senator receives for travel, for expenses, for hotel stays.
Per diem.
Just for what Fitzy spent. That was a lot of money.
Yes.
And he only lives in Juneau.
45
Yeah.
minutes.
Couldn't cost that much. In fact, why couldn't he do it? When he's of his heart, drive to his job.
Shared sacrifice.
I don't get to get money when I drive to my job. That's my concern.
Thanks. I think she's referring to last year, Senator Fitzgerald claimed $18,000 in per diem expenses, so that's not mileage even. From what I understand, that's meals and lodging in Madison. So, yeah, I think that's more than some people make in a year. And to make that on top of your salary, on top of your mileage, does to me seem excessive.
Any other
If
concerns?
you didn't live in, with the redistricting, if it didn't go through, you had mentioned that you may have to take an apartment in the district. Would you be paying per diem on the apartment, or is that going to be out of your pocket?
You know what, we're going to cross that bridge when we come to it. I don't expect that this redistricting, I don't think these lines are going to stand as they are. I think the judges are sending clear signals that they think that process is really unfair. So, you know, I'm hoping that I'm still living in the district. I hope we don't have to sell our house and move 10 miles away. I think it's very interesting that Scott Fitzgerald apparently apparently drew out his main two political enemies, Todd Neals in Fox Lake and Andy Jorgensen in Fort Atkinson. I think the judges are probably going to take a look at that, and we'll see what happens.
How is an assembly person a state senator's enemy?
Well, I said political enemy. I think
But
that,
if you're in session, how,
Do you have a
if you're in the
question?
assembly? No, I'm just asking her to clarify enemies here.
I'm saying,
Now he can't run for Senate.
I understand that, but, you know.
Okay, let's move on. I think we all know what I meant. Yeah, so other concerns that you have that you would like
Yes, please.
to mention?
Yes, I have a real concern not only with Walker, but with Fitzgerald, with the ethics that are involved. The ethics, going on with his staffers when working on Milwaukee County dime, taxpayer dime, for, while he was running for governor.
Do you have a question?
And, yeah, well, that's my concern. And the other concern is too, is the outright cronyism that's going on. The fact that they got the Fitzgerald brothers, and you can write that down, cronyism, in getting their father a job as the head of the state patrol. A man who was rejected by the Dodge County voters in September 2010 in the Republican sheriff primary, winning only 32% of the vote. That's a great concern, that type of cronyism.
Do you have a question? Let's look focus on
Cronyism.
focus on what Lori is here. She's here to listen. Yes, please.
I'd like to make my statement of what I like to see. I want to keep more money in my pocket. I'm a hardworking citizen. Give less money to government, and less money to those who can get their own job and to pay for themselves rather than paying their way for them. That's what I want to see happen.
okay, so I just a quick question for you. I have heard that people say they want to pay less taxes, and I'm just wondering what would be an acceptable amount for you? Considering what you get from your taxes, considering you get roads, and you get sidewalks, you get fire protection, you get police protection, when you turn on your tap,
No
water
more
goes
than what
up.
I'm paying now. Anything up and above that is excessive, just like the gas prices are right now.
So would you accept, say, what
Except
strikes?
nothing, except for what is paying now or less.
Okay, but let me just finish my sentence. What I'm seeing with the way our system is set up right now is our taxes might stay the same, like the actual income tax that we pay. But then the schools go, oh my gosh, you know, we need more money, we can't afford to keep these teachers, we can't afford new computers, we can't afford the services, the basic services that our students need. So we need to ask for a levy, or we see communities that are going low.
Well, my school taxes went down, so I'm not worried about that. And they can cut in other areas, like salaries. They can increase benefits, having them pay for their own benefits, just like I do in the corporate world. So,
Well, what I've heard is that we want the best teachers, not the very cheapest.
well, also employers want the best employees, but we still have to pay our share in terms of our benefits. And we're accepting of that, we know.
All right,
It
so
can be done.
Okay, so
thank
what I'm
you.
hearing is you want your taxes to stay the same.
I want to keep more money in my pocket, give less money to government and less money to those who can get their own job and pay their own way.
okay. Yes, Lori, you have a question, and then I'll go to you. Yes, please.
Yes, I just wondered, I've heard before that schools are being starved, you know, somehow there's not enough money coming in for them. My understanding is that there's $12,000 about per student being paid in taxes or whatever comes in to educate a student this year. How much is enough to educate a student? I mean, when do we get to the top of being able to provide a good education and yet not every year needing more money to go to that student? And when does that ever end, or does it?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that has to be decided by each community, how much they want to support their students. I know in Fort Atkinson the other day I was talking with an art teacher and she was lamenting the lack of computers in the art department. She said, I'm supposed to teach graphic design. It's 2012 and we don't have any computers. You really can't teach kids to be competitive in the workplace in 2012 without computers. I mean, if you're doing like cutting and pasting and whiteout and stuff like that. So, you know, it really depends on the community. It depends on the level of services that the communities want to provide. I would like to see there be more local control of the schools. But what do you think? Do you think that $12,000 range is off? I mean, considering that the public schools have to serve children of all needs?
And I know that there could be some other repercussion to this, but when we go to voucher schools, charter schools, virtual schools, from my understanding, I believe it's voucher schools, if a student goes there, they get half the amount of money that that we pay to a school district per student. So let's take the number, if you want to, only because it's easy math, is $12,000. So if there's $12,000 to educate that student in the public school, the voucher is only for $6,000.
Okay.
So then, in my understanding is that's what that school gets paid. The other amount goes to the school district, and that student isn't even there. And they get that money, is that correct? That's right. Yes, it is. I'm sure it is, because
I would need to look into that.
the student isn't there, but the district gets $6,000. There's no student to teach. Over here, they're going there, so that means that the family and everybody else is paying for him to go to a private school, or go to the school of their choice.
So
We'll
So
compare.
I'm saying $6,000, if they can educate for $6,000, why are we spending $12,000?
You're not comparing apples to apples in that case because a voucher school is not the same as a public school.
Why
A
is
public
that?
school, well, because I'll tell you why it's not the same.
I'm all ears.
A public school has to educate every kid who walks through the door. And I've seen kids at my kids' school who are in wheelchairs, they're completely immobile. They require at least one staff person to be with that child all day. So that one child takes up an entire staff person's salary for that whole year. Voucher school doesn't have to take that child. A voucher school can say no to anyone they want. Secondly, a voucher school has no certification requirements. So you might have a kid with special needs, or you might have a kid who doesn't know how to read because they're in kindergarten, and you don't have like a reading specialist. You don't have a certified teacher teaching them. It's just anybody who walks on the street. You don't have to do background checks. I mean, the comparison between a public school where the teachers are certified, where the teachers know what they're doing, and a voucher school, you're not comparing the same thing. Of course, it's cheaper.
I work with schools have to be certified every year. They have to have a charter.
They don't have to test their students and standardized testing. It's not.
All right, but it seems to me, okay, so that's a question, you're gonna look into that, and there'll be more information? Okay,
And I'd like to
sir, you
just
had
give you
a,
one example, Urban Day School in Milwaukee, if you want to just write that down, because I also saw that, oh, there are BMWs in the parking lot. No, this is in deep Milwaukee, poorest region. They have like 90% that go on to high school. They have the best scores, so just Urban Day School, if you want to
got it,
use that
thank
as
you
an
very much.
example.
Okay, yes, sir, you had a question? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to know the reason Fitzgerald is getting recalled, other than his voting records.
That is a good question. Thank you for
I
asking.
can't hear you very well.
I said that's a good question, and thank you for asking it. The reason that I think everyone has their own reason for signing that petition. What all of them boil down to is process, abuse of power, and betrayal of trust. Oh.
Well, do you expect the people that voted for him in the last election expected him to vote Democratic or Republican? Do you think they voted for him to, what? Am I doing that?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, I don't want to talk.
Oh, wait, no.
address that?
I mean, yeah, I'll go ahead and answer his question.
My question kind of relates.
Well, just,
One at a time, please.
I'll just answer his question. He said, do I expect people who voted for Scott Fitzgerald to vote for a Democrat in the next election? I don't expect anything. I'm seeing some hands. I don't expect that, but I have been told by people who signed the petition, I've been told by people at listening sessions that I've had already, that they are going to switch their vote. And they're telling me it's not because of the policy, it's because of the process that he's followed. This is what I've been told.
I have a question here, and then we'll take questions. This was submitted earlier. This is from Judy Schwager. I have heard that with the voter ID bill, people are being disenfranchised. I was wondering if I have also learned that nursing home residents do not need a photo ID. You know, it goes on about that. Could you please address the photo ID and, voter ID bill?
Sure, this is a huge problem, and this is another thing that's coming up continually is the voter ID issue. It is so complicated, I don't even know all the rules. And I know there are some volunteers here who have gotten their, they've been deputized to register people to vote, and so they might be able to answer the nursing home question better than I can. I also know that last I heard, the voter ID law had been enjoined. Is that still the case? Basically, it's been found that it's so unfair and that it disenfranchises so many people that a judge has said, we're gonna wait a while and look into this before we say that this is really in effect. So I know that the instances of voter fraud are very, very low. And of course, it's a shame when that happens, but the way this law is written, it doesn't even prevent the types of fraud we've seen, like for people voting more than once or convicted felons. It doesn't say on your driver's license that you're a felon and you can't vote, so if they've got the ID, they can vote. To me, that it just seems like they wasted a lot of time when they could have been working on jobs to discuss this problem that, yeah, that's true. Someone was asking about the cost of recalls. Implementing this voter ID law is going to cost a lot of money, too.
Lori, as you know, that was my question.
Well, just a minute. Oh, I'm going to let you.
Yes, please. Let's have somebody else. The lady in the back, please. Yeah.
Oh, sure. Can you guys come on?
Come on. If you can stand over by the road, wall there at least so that we can hear. Okay. We want everyone, there's a couple of things there.
I'm glad you have real pictures.
I'm not joking. The lady in the back, the purple, please. Yes, please. Yeah.
Oh, well, one of my concerns is
I haven't done
the
anything.
extreme polarity and animosity between the two political parties. And I would like to see a more bipartisan approach. And
Thank you. I agree. Next question.
What part of bipartisan are you looking for, I guess, is my question. What's bipartisan?
To me, bipartisan cooperation means both sides coming together, the Republicans and the Democrats, and actually talking about where they stand on issues, where they can find common ground, and doing the people's work. Because I think a lot of the stuff they're working on right now isn't really a priority. I mean, when I go around and talk to people, I don't hear people clamoring for voter ID laws. And, you know,
because we have one now, that's why we're not.
Well, ma'am, let's let somebody else.
Yeah, I think we know where you stand on a lot of these things. Can we hear from some other people?
All right, yes, sir.
How many months have we lost jobs when Walker's, a whole idea was to create jobs, and what are you going to do about jobs?
Yeah, we've lost jobs every month since the Walker-Fitzgerald budget went into effect. I think what their approach has been to give money to very wealthy people and very large corporations, and they seem to be focused on this idea that, you know, maybe we can trick companies from Minnesota to come over, Illinois to come up. And
Call them tricking.
Wait, please, let her, we're gonna have a polite conversation. Please allow Laura to answer the question and raise your hand. Thank you.
Don't use the words, adjectives like trick. When you're using accounting, you say it's a tricky accounting. Accounting is not tricky.
Ma'am, we'll be courteous. Thank you. Let Laura answer and then you'll raise your
Just
hand.
double standard.
It's not a double standard. I discussed on Twitter, right after Walker took office, there was a company that had just said it was moving to Wisconsin. And so I talked to the guy and I said, you know, this is great, and I know what an upheaval it can be to have to move a bunch of employees, and just kind of told him that I respected his decision to do that. And he's like, oh, we're just right across the border in Illinois. And so basically he said that they'd hopped the border several times, so they just are looking for the better tax climate. And so none of his employees had to move. And I just thought, this is a race to the bottom. They're pitting Wisconsin against Illinois. That's not good economic policy. You want good economic policy for your whole region, not, again, a race to the bottom as far as who can get the most tax breaks.
Anybody else? Yeah.
No, and the question was, what would I do about jobs? So that seems to be their approach. My approach is different. I own a small business, and it would be larger if the climate, I feel like, were better. Like if I didn't have to pay for employees' health insurance, I think I would actually be able to hire on a full-time employee. And so what I'm really interested in doing is talking to other small business owners, talking to people who are entrepreneurs, and saying, you know, what do you need? What can government do for you to help you make the leap from, you know, say you're doing your work part-time right now. What would it take? What policies would help you go full-time? What policies would help you hire full-time employees? Because really, I think anyone who owns a business knows that in order to be successful, your employees have to feel good about themselves. They have to feel like they're being taken care of. It's great if you can send them to training. Things like this are really important, and government can help. And so that's what I would do to create jobs.
Lady in the back, please, with Hannah. Yes.
Kind of related to what your last point had been, I don't like these policies that try to get states to move from other states for jobs. I would love to see incentives to bring companies back from overseas back to our country, and that's what I would
Yeah, I agree. And one of the important things about these sheets that we're passing around is there's a little place to tick off if you have special knowledge in a particular area. So if you have knowledge in that policy area, please let me know on these sheets and hand them in, because what I'm hoping to do over the course of the campaign is assemble teams of people, particularly business people, so that people who know the ins and outs and all the intricacies of these issues can inform me on, just kind of share their knowledge with me so that I can form better opinions as we go.
Okay, I'm going to take the question from the gentleman in the sweater, and then over here, and then Anthony, I have your question, so please.
I guess I just wanted to say something about the issue of bipartisanship and then Lori's comment about process. I've gone to the Capitol over the years to deal with different kinds of legislation and been able to talk to both Republicans and Democrats, and it's really not been a problem talking to both sides of the aisle. And in the last 2 years, it's been really very distressing to me what's been happening at the Capitol. And I think, to have meetings that are called by one side when there's no notice to the other side, late at night, and not following the rules that really is been a huge departure from what's been done in the past and has created just a huge rift between the two parties. I think that's the process that has really gone off track and created this huge split between the parties, and I think that's really been the change that's happened in the last year.
And do you have a question?
No, I have a comment. And
okay.
That's what I think Lori's here to hear comments, not answer questions. And I think she needs to hear that I think the process does need to change because the legislature is horribly broken right now.
Yeah, and if I could comment on that, it's also very expensive. I went to the redistricting hearing last summer. There was only one public hearing on that whole redistricting process. And Congressman Obey testified, former Congressman Obey testified at that hearing. And he talked about how redistricting used to work. He said that he would sit down at a table with 6 or 7 people, 6 or 7 of his colleagues, and they would look at the lines that had been drawn at the municipal level. So, the city clerk in Lake Mills would sit down and draw the lines. And then they would chunk those together to form the districts. And it was all done on staff time. So it was, it wasn't free. We had to pay for their salaries, but we were paying their salaries anyway. And that's what it cost. This year, this time around, Scott Fitzgerald and his brother Jeff Fitzgerald hired a law firm in Madison and paid them at least $400,000 that we know of to draw these lines. And if you look at those lines, some of them look like lace. Some of them have like little islands of, one district has a little chunk of another district over here. I mean, it's very strange. It's unlike anything that I've ever seen. It's called gerrymandering, I guess. And they even admitted it in the emails that they were forced to release. So we've also got a staffer of Jeff Fitzgerald's, a staffer of Scott Fitzgerald's, are paid by us. They're paid by taxpayers. And they're not working in the Capitol. They're working in that law firm's office. They can't do political work in the Capitol because they're being paid by taxpayers. And so what I want to know is, why are they working in those attorneys' offices? Why are we paying? I mean, I understand people don't want to pay a whole lot of tax money. I don't want to see my taxpayer money that's going for the people's work going to pay these guys who are doing blatantly political stuff. They're not even using their official emails. They're using Gmail accounts so they can get around having to report what they're saying. That's just wrong. And I don't think there's anyone
health insurance instead. You want to?
Who's running the show?
We're going to have a courteous dialogue here, and please raise your hand. There are other people, but there are other people that
my question to you is, and I'm sure you're aware of this, but Act 10 has mandated that public employees pay half of their pension and 12% of their health care. And my question to you is, should you be elected as senator, will you vote to repeal Act 10? And if you do, how will you make up for that huge budget shortfall?
Well, as I understand it, the public employees had already agreed to those concessions. And what... Go ahead, Nicole. Even though it was part of a total package. So my parents are both retired school teachers, and I know that they didn't make as much money working as teachers as they would have made in the private sector. But they agreed to the lower pay in exchange for the benefits that they got. And so the fact that these public employees made those concessions is really amazing to me. It really tells me how much they care about what they do. It tells me how much they care about their jobs. What I think people are upset about with Act 10 is it eliminates people's right to sit down at the table and negotiate the terms of their employment.
Anthony had a question, and he said, do you support right to work?
No.
Would you like to follow up on that question?
Yeah, I have some follow-ups.
Well, specifically on that question?
Yeah, on that. On right to work, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development found in a study that communities that had right to work, that were in right to work states, were more resilient in economic downturns, and communities in right to work states were also much less affected by negative GDP growth, or GMP, gross metropolitan product. So, and communities that have higher manufacturing bases are also more resilient. And I think right to work states encourage manufacturing. And one thing about this, I think this demonization of business and rich people is a bad thing for our country to do. I could see why they go to other countries. I could see why they move down south. Because why should they be where they're not wanted? That's why I say, why should they create jobs amongst people who demonize them and call them bad for wanting to save their money to use for their own purposes? Enterprise. What's so bad about wanting to save your own money and use it for enterprise?
I don't think anything's bad about that at all. Thank you for your comment. So what I'm hearing is that you've seen studies that say that right to work communities are actually more resilient. Is that?
Yeah, it's by Obama's.
Okay, I would love, send me a link. I'd love to see that. My gut reaction and what I've been hearing from other people is that when unions are strong, when people are paid a fair wage, when they have safe working conditions, that brings everyone in society up. Back in the 50s, when we had a lot of manufacturing and we had a lot of people who were treated right, we had a large middle class that was very successful. And over the years, we've seen an erosion of that. That's just that's everybody's experience.
Second gentleman there, and then number 2, and then number 3, and then we'll get to the other people. Please raise your hand. Go ahead, please. Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. I'm also a small business owner. I develop software, and I wanted to just kind of get back to the issue of like priorities. So apart from the issue of not being able to afford healthcare, so I want to bring on more employees. Having highly trained people in the types of positions that I need to fill is an issue, and also given the particular subset of the industry I work in, if I move, a few hundred miles north into Canada, I can get substantial tax breaks, in addition to, government-paid healthcare, which is substantially cheaper. So I think kind of what I would like to see is that in our, pro-business environment, that we are taking small businesses into equal consideration, as well as large businesses, because we need to be able to grow in order to employ more people, and if we don't have laws in place to allow us to do that, it makes it substantially harder.
Okay, so just to summarize what you said that, and I completely agree with you, that small businesses need, would you say like a better climate to foster growth?
Equal consideration from the legislature as large businesses.
Great, okay, so take small business into consideration, great. And you said healthcare would be a huge, I know that from my own, and I bet a lot of people who own their own businesses feel that way too. And training, getting better trained workers. Great.
Gentleman right here, please, yes.
Yeah, the comment about as far as the right to work. Have you noticed that over the past, you made a comment about 50 years. Over the past 50 years, well, back then, unions were necessary to help control work environments, and we got OSHA to do that now. Have you noticed that these union companies are the ones that have mostly pulled out and have left the country, and you feel that that's based upon the fact that they just couldn't afford the benefits and wages that they're being asked to give for unreasonable work?
I would have to see statistics on companies that have left the country and companies that were.
Look at any of them.
Send me a list.
Look at Alice Chalmers. Look at, right across the street over here.
Yeah, but Briggs and Stratton is #1 in the small engine division in the world, and they're here.
Major corporations that left. The same reason why Boeing left Washington to go to the Carolinas. And plain and simple, because they just could not afford what they were being asked for by the unions. And I can't understand how you would want Wisconsin to only be that. I understand.
I'm committed to representing the people in this district, and what I've heard through the petition drive is that people are fed up with the attack on unions. And so I will take this into account, that you feel strongly about this, but out of the people in this room, it feels like you are probably the minority here.
Oh yeah, definitely in this room, there's no doubt about it, but not in Wisconsin.
The mining, how would have you voted on the mining?
Ma'am.
It's
not your turn.
Whoa.
Please raise your hand. We'll get to you. If there's time, we'll do that. This gentleman right here.
I'm going to interrupt you, and I'm not shouting out in the middle of it.
Please, this gentleman right here, please.
Yeah, I have a lot of concern, especially when it comes to women, the attack on Planned Parenthood, which is concerned with women's health, and the identification amongst ultra reactionary conservatives that contraceptives be banned. And I get a feeling that, and I hope you don't share it, that women, we should go back to the dark ages, and women should be a container for breeding, and have virtually no rights. How do you feel about that? No, it's not.
I do.
Women are individuals. And they have
You don't let the Republicans talk, but you let.
You talk plenty.
You have let all these outbursts, people are leaving left and right because they can't speak. And it's not fair. And that bipartisan is supposed to be cooperation, not compromise.
I'd just like to remind everybody, please, I'd like to remind everybody we have clipboards. If you have a question, a comment, please write that down.
Don't allow these
Ma'am,
outbursts.
please.
You have to speak.
Well, people can agree.
You're the ones doing the outbursts. Yeah.
What was that? Everybody's standing up.
Yeah, where are you talking?
Please, if you have a question or comment, please write them down. Lauren will get back to you with your name and your phone number and your address. So, Hans? Yes, please.
You know what, one thing I was struck with is after Lori announced that the response back from Senator Fitzgerald did not mention District 13, right? I mean, it could have been something that Walker would have said in response to that. So, what, you're here in Lake Mills for a reason, right? And what I think that is for us to tell you what you can do for us, for the district, as far as jobs, as far as healthcare. I just, you know, we're talking a lot about state policy and national policy, and that's fine, but I'd just like to maybe bring it back to District 13. So if you could talk about, you know, your ideas.
Yeah, I can answer yours. Thank you. I mean, can we get a little bit more specific?
Sure, economic development, you know, industrial parks, micro-business.
Sure, yeah. One thing that I've been hearing a lot about is people would like to encourage more tourism. They would like to, especially with the microbreweries we have here, the bike trails, the rivers, the lakes, the natural amenities that we have. I'm hearing a lot of people say that they wish that their senator would promote this area more, you know, kind of lean on the tourism department, lean on the economic development department a little bit more to try and get more activity in this region.
Gentleman right there, and then in the back of the room.
Just a quick comment to go back to right to work. Historically, and I'm a 45-year member of a construction group, and historically, and we followed this. Historically, any state that institutes right to work, the standard of living goes down. And then, quick comment on context. The government has no business telling a woman what she can do with her body.
Amen. If that's true, then why should they have to pay for it? If that is true, then why should the government have to pay for it?
We have tried to establish the fact that this is not a debate. There are people who are violating that on both sides of the aisle, and it has to stop. You can speak when you are called on, and other than that, please refrain from a comment. I understand your frustration, I understand your anger, but this is not the place to express it in that way. So could we please continue with the person who was talking and wanted to make a comment? Boy, did you get to finish? He was talking about right to work. Did that person get to finish? Okay. Are you finished, Boyd?
Yeah. Okay. And another thing I forgot to mention is we follow this, we do studies on it, and he mentioned down south. I've been retired for a few years, but the state of Mississippi, right to work state, the state of Wisconsin, at that time a few years back, could build 3 miles of road, a highway, for what Mississippi did 1 mile.
Yes. Thank you. Gentleman in the back, yes, please.
This is just what I'd like to see as far as economic development within the state. I'd like to, one, see what's, come up with some sort of program to see what skills the state of Wisconsin's actually lacking. Like I know, for example, welding seems to always come up. And I'd like to see a reinvestment in education for those causes, as well as the higher tech jobs that are coming around, like biotech and software development. I'd like to see an investment in education in those. And also, I'd like to see the job incubation centers actually specifically targeted at those higher tech jobs so that we have a future that's sustainable in Wisconsin, because I really don't think manufacturing is going to be around for the United States.
Great, thank you. So just to sum up what you said, you think that we kind of need to transition between manufacturing by kind of doing a skill survey and seeing what skills exist in the state, well, and within the district especially, and then trying to fund education to meet the areas that are lacking, and then also invest more in biotechnology and more high-tech.
High-tech future, you know, maybe do a study on what is going to be the future high-tech jobs that actually can sustain the state. Because like I said, I think manufacturing is a dying industry in the United States.
Lori, I have 4 questions here, and then we'll get to the first one here is, education has been under attack. The Senate Bill 486, special ed vouchers, would take nearly $13,600 to a voucher school without having to implement the IEP amendments to prevent cherry picking, taking the least disabled learners and the most needy, requiring the largest amount of money to serve. Can you please comment on the special ed vouchers that was just Senate bill? That was just.
Yeah, to me that sounds like a terrible idea. I think special education students are the ones who most need those IEP, the individual education program. The paperwork that goes with that is very detailed. The teachers and specialists evaluate what each child needs. They have a specific plan for it. In fact, I think I might have said it wrong. It's an individualized education plan, not program, sorry. And that plan needs to be adhered to in order to meet the needs of those students. And so the idea of sending one of those students to a school that doesn't have to meet those needs really seems to me counterproductive.
And here's the second question. Will you repeal the part of Act 10 that mandates public employees pay 1/2 of their pension contribution and 12% of their health insurance?
Well, that is not something that I would be able to do personally. And I think it's the kind of thing that we've got to sit down with the budget, we've got to look at all the priorities, and again, as I said earlier, that's already been agreed to, so that might not even be on the table with the next budget. I don't know.
Here's the next question. What ideas would you like to see implemented at the state level to address affordable health care needs?
Yeah, well, that kind of goes back to the Badger Care issue. I think Badger Care is something that can be paid for right away, but I also would like to see programs expanded, because I think some people just barely don't qualify for Badger Care who still need access to affordable health care. And for me, and for, you know, if it's the consensus of people that I talk to, and it seems to be the consensus of people around the district, that affordable health care is a priority, then I would make it a priority, and I would sit down with my staff, and I would sit down with the staffs of other legislators and figure out how can we pay for this.
2 more questions here. Would you look at the redistricting methods used in Iowa, which have been done by computers and not by political people?
Yeah, there are several different methods for redistricting that I think would work much better than hiring a private law firm that's known to be a partisan law firm to do that.
And the last question that was submitted to me, how can we do more environmentally?
That's kind of broad. Who asked that?
Dave Collinson did. Dave, you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, everything is anti-environmental as far as I'm concerned. The whole country is going anti-environmental. I'd like to know how we can stop this trend to drift into the corporations writing the ticket for what environmentalism ought to be. And I don't think that we should let the corporations take over writing whatever the environmental view of your position should be. I think the environment is the most important thing on the menu. And like Gaylord Nelson said, it is really the genesis of all prosperity. Even, well, our jobs are dependent on the environment roundabout.
Right, yeah. I don't think that we all appreciate here how wonderful it is that we have the healthy environment that we have. I don't think you can really fully appreciate it until you go somewhere else. I visited Mexico a few years ago, and in our hotel, which is in a decent part of town in Oaxaca, Mexico, one day we came back and turned on the tap and no water came out. And we were talking with a professor who said, oh yeah, you know, he was a professor, fairly well off, and he said the majority of homes in that city would just experience sporadic water loss. You know, you would turn on the tap and nothing would come out. And he said it was usually 2 to 3 days a week. They did not have water at all. And you just can't grasp how amazing that is until you live through it. You're just like, well, where am I going to get my water? And they have trucks that drive around and sell big things of bottled water. And I just thought, you know, I mean, here's a case where maybe their taxes are lower than here, but when they turn on their tap, no water comes out. So, you know, taxes can be a good thing. And as far as, you know, the environment, I think our state's environment, you know, in general, largely depends on who the Secretary of the Department of Natural Resources is. I mean, that person kind of sets the course. And I have to say I was really disappointed at the appointment of someone from the Builders Association, Kathy Stepp, as the head of the Department of Natural Resources. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Gentleman with the UW lacrosse shirt, yes, please.
I was just wondering, I'm just a recently retired state employee, and I have excellent health care and retirement pension plan, which I understand we're being attacked, and I don't quite understand why everybody wants to take us down when there's an excellent plan there. But my question to you is, could those plans, could that health insurance, and could that retirement be used to help the gentleman that was here from a small business person or farmers? Why can't people come join those plans instead of taking those plans and saying, hey, you can't have this benefit because I can't have it? What about letting everybody have those plans? Opening it up.
That's great. I don't know, but it is, you know, that's something that's a big concern to farmers, is that oftentimes farm families, one spouse has to work off the farm, at least one, sometimes both, just to get health insurance for the family. And you know, I think farms are stronger. Farms often take 2 people to really run them, more than full time. You know, 2 people working 60, 80-hour weeks. And to force one or both of those people to work off the farm just to get health insurance really is counterproductive. And farms are businesses too. I think we need to remember that.
Gentleman with the hat on, please.
Thanks for taking my question, Lori. This is a bipartisan subject, but I think it's something that, are you familiar with United Nations Agenda 21?
No.
Okay. I think that you seriously need to look at that if you're going to get into politics, and everybody in this room needs to look at Agenda 21 by the United Nations, because it's going to affect everybody from the federal government all the way down to the city council in the next 20 years. So if you get a chance, look up Agenda 21.
Can you give me a brief overview? Like, what's your concern with it?
The concern is on both sides of the fence. Republican and Democrat, things that have been signed without law, things that are going to affect farmers.
I'm sorry, I just don't
Specifics,
know.
well, they're talking about outlawing septic tanks. Yes, I'm serious. These are things that are going to happen, and they're going to affect everybody in this room. So the things that we're complaining about right now, I totally understand, because the government, both sides of the fence, keeps turning around and just taking stuff away from everybody. And that's why we have this bitterness between us. We're not doing this, the government's doing it. And it's on both sides of the fence. So if you get an opportunity to look up Agenda 21 United Nations, because it's going to affect everybody in this room. Thank you.
And kind of a comment, I guess, of the gentleman who talked about why everybody can't have the wonderful health care that maybe state or, teachers have. Somebody has to pay for that somewhere. The government, everybody says we get it from the government. Who is the government, people? We are.
That's
Where
right.
do we
We're
get our
fighting
money?
amongst each other. Come on,
Where do we get our money?
it's gonna affect
We get it from
everybody.
the people who work, right? Taxes, we pay the salaries. If there aren't any big, ugly corporations who the owners have put their money out to develop, like this man right back here, he wants to develop his corporation, hire more people. Pretty soon, he's gonna be one of those ugly people, ugly, big business corporations. No, I am, but that's because that's the feeling I get. I'm all for free enterprise and for everybody to make the most money they can make. Pay taxes so that you can help, you can contribute. But you're hiring people. People work, people pay taxes. People pay your salaries as teachers and public employees. If you killed off the big business people, you're going to kill your taxes that you get to pay your wages. To me, I don't understand why you can't see that. We have to have people working. You have to have people putting out thousands and millions of dollars, their livelihood, to develop something to hire people. So why not support them instead of to make them look ugly?
Okay, not trying to make them look ugly, just,
Greedy,
I think there should be
No,
some.
they're paying your salary, they're helping pay
Okay,
your salary.
please, this is, we're starting right now.
They're not.
Please do not interrupt her, let her finish her statement.
I appreciate that.
We'll
I
have a
just- I
chance to
get-
talk.
I just get so upset when I hear that corporations are evil and ugly
Okay.
and bad.
I don't think anyone here has said
I
that.
think that's the
When-
impression I got when you first started talking.
Okay, well, I don't
But
mean
I'm
to.
sorry, okay.
I don't mean to give that impression.
Okay.
What I'm saying is corporations should have to pay their fair share. Right now they don't. There should be accountability. If we give tax credits to, someone who's a job creator, I want to see proof that they created jobs. Right now, I'm not seeing that.
Well, you know what, and there again, I'll go back with this gentleman, bipartisan. Lately, with what's happened, let's say in Madison, just the ugliness that happened in our capital last year, all this ugliness, it seems and obviously I'm on the opposite side, the more conservative side, but it seems as if this, my side, my conservatism, I can change what I believe as long as I go along with the other side. Then I'm being bipartisan. Then I'm getting along. I never see the other side want to give up and come my way. And that's bipartisan. Like he said, that's cooperation on both sides. We don't see it. Look what just happened with the mining bill. And this was just a regulatory bill. This is just nothing. And we voted straight lines except for the one senator.
And Lord, do you have a comment about bipartisanship?
How are you going to do this?
Who wrote the bill?
Wait. You wrote the bill, yeah. Maybe we can stay after and talk about mining. I've only got about 10, 15 minutes before I have to go to water leave.
Okay.
But what I think about when I think about bipartisanship, and when I hear you say, I'm on the opposite side, I don't like that because I really believe that all of us, but we are in this together, and we do have, I know if we could go out for coffee sometime, we could come to an understanding of at least a few things. I want to feel comfortable in my life. I don't need to be wealthy, but I would like to be able to put a roof on my house. So far not happening. We can all agree we don't want to see our tax money wasted. We pay our taxes, we pay our fair share. We want to know that money is going to work for us and for our communities. We can start there, we can agree on that. I think there are probably other things we can agree on. It's going to take longer than 2 minutes on a Sunday afternoon, but I'm committed to the long haul in this and trying to understand people who say they're on the opposite side, because I really don't think we are.
No.
I agree. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Please, yes, go ahead.
I just more of an idea than a question. So, bringing together environment, agriculture, and manufacturing. I just, with your husband, finished an undergraduate research project I'm still working on actually, and utilizing biodigester technology on small farms in cooperatives, and it was supporting those, not the big high, I don't have anything against the big high corporate people, but we need to bring up the people in the middle and the bottom. And we are losing, even a little survey that I did of 400 farmers in a 7-county region, including Jefferson County, we've lost, we were going to be losing about 20 farms in the next year. And this is a trend which actually started back when we switched to dairy. We used to have many, many more thousands of farms than we do. But to get, those are businessmen, like you say, and to give them more of an opportunity to build, we need to come up with creative ideas like these crop or the biodiversity. And the relationship to manufacturing is we have a brand new, not a brand new company, it's 100 years old, BioFirm, which just moved into Madison that creates a modular unit that they are trying to work out to go onto farms in Wisconsin and just make it work like they do in Germany right now, which uses some different materials for it. They're going to spend $500,000 to bring a prototype to Wisconsin to do test patterns. And if it works, they are building a brand new manufacturing plant here. So I want to see you support companies like that that are bringing jobs to Wisconsin, that actually support people with good paying jobs and help these farmer businessmen succeed and businesswomen.
Fantastic.
Lori, a gentleman over here has a question for you.
Not as much a question. Is we've talked about jobs a little bit, and Lori's asked for you guys' input if you're an expert in some area. I've been in manufacturing for 30 years. I've worked as a janitor up to a business consultant, as a manufacturing engineer. I've also gone out and worked with small businesses, medium businesses, helping them fix their operations, helping them figure out how to survive. So I've got a really good experience from the bottom all the way up to the top of these businesses. So I'm going to offer that to Lori. We have a study that analyzes the 7 regions of the state. There's 26 driver industries in this state, like automotive, electrical, paint, those kinds of things. And those all impact all of the small businesses below them. I've personally gone out looking for metal parts in Milwaukee and Chicago. Working with a guy that's trying to fix his machine. This is a huge stratum of business and people. So I see a lot of these current job issues as kind of ideological, but I don't see any analysis of if you do this, this will happen. If we support our small businesses, these little shops that provide support for Briggs & Stratton is one of them, Harley-Davidson, Case. If they don't have these little guys there that have all the expertise, they're screwed, honestly. A lot of this manufacturing's gone to China. All of the expertise with, molding a little piece of plastic is very difficult. It's over in China now. And we need it back here. So I'm going to offer some of that experience about making some of these businesses work for everybody. Now, I've slid pretty far to the left, not the right. But I don't really care. I just want a bunch of businesses to be successful and all of you guys to be rich. So we agree on that, absolutely.
Yes, please.
Do you agree with the Rock County Democratic Party that gas taxes should go up?
This is the first I've heard of that. I don't know, I have to look into it. Thanks.
Yes, please.
Just want to get back to your question on your suggestion that that company is coming for the agriculture advancement. Are they getting government grants?
I'm really not sure of anything.
Because I was wondering, if it's revenue out of their infrastructure for that research.
I really wouldn't have any idea about that.
And I was also wondering when my question would go, because you haven't answered my question.
This about, I know I have it, but you had 3 or 4 chances to speak, and I wanted everyone else first. You will get answered. I explained that. You will get answered. We will call you.
Yep.
It's actually, I think we said we'd end at 2. So I don't know.
Okay.
Well, I was just saying that I could stay afterward and talk to people if they, in small groups or whatever, if they want. But if people have to go, it is 2 o'clock. And so we'll end it now, and I'll be happy. I'll hang out here until about about 5 to 10 more minutes? Okay, thank you very much.